Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman. Everyone out there, thank you so much for tuning in. So today on the program, we have none other than Scott Schober, who of course runs Berkeley Varitronics Systems and of course author of Hacked Again and our resident cybersecurity expert. So hey, we get to talk about all the current events and all the recent news happenings, and hey, just to try to keep you up to date on what's happening out there. And you know, so often we hear in the news about people just kind of wave their hands and go, oh well, they got hacked. Oh my God, isn't that awful? But no, we're here to break it down and see why things happen, how they can not happen to you, and more. So everyone, this is always a fun segment. You're going to want to stick around. But first things first, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including a link to our guest website, any articles that we talk about, any videos that we show, anything and everything can be found right there in the show notes. And of course, while you're there, be sure to check out the live video feed. And on top of that, check out some of the recent articles. I'm going to push this every day until I forget. Check out our recent review, actually, of Beyond Burger. Yeah, where we covered the meat substitute. That was a lot of fun, and it was fun to cook, fun to eat, and fun to review. So check that one out. And lots of other articles that are more tech bent, but hey, that's just one of the more recent ones that I can recall off the top of my head. Now, okay, with everything, with all that out of the way, why don't we go ahead and bring on our guest who's waiting oh so patiently in the wings, and that is, again, none other than our own Scott Schober, Berkeley Varitronics System, author of Hacked Again, and of course just seems to be lately everyone's go-to guy for cybersecurity news and analysis. So, Scott, welcome back onto the program. How you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. Wonderful to be back with you there, Ben.
Happy that you could be here. And before we get started, hey, pleasantries. How's it going? Everything going well?
Oh, yeah, everything's going good. Very busy in the world of cyber. It never seems to slow down. I keep thinking things are going to get better, but it gets worse from the standpoint of data breaches and hacking. And I guess it depends on what side of the table you're from, but it's good for me and good for cybersecurity experts, but bad for consumers and small business owners.
Yeah, and obviously there's been a lot of a lot of hacks and a lot of news, and you have put together a very impressive list. And on top of that, even more are coming in, I guess as they kind of pop into your head. But yeah, there's tons and tons of articles. Why don't we go ahead and let's give the folks a bit of your background. I mentioned Berkeley Varitronics, I mentioned Hacked Again, but just talk about your let's say over the past couple of years, your further inclination into the world of technology, hacking, security. What keeps you going in this industry?
Yeah, certainly. The company that I'm running, Berkeley Varitronics Systems, we're headquartered here out of central New Jersey in Metuchen, and we design wireless threat analysis tools that are really used extensively by cyber agencies. A lot of our customer base is governments, so DoD agencies, anywhere where there's a wireless threat, be it cell phones, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or any other radio frequency threat, that's where we come in and design and sell test tools that allow you to hunt down these signals. And oftentimes they're closely tied into cyber breaches. So I kind of am at that intersection of wireless security and cyber security, as they say, because the two seem to go hand in hand, because wireless is such a popular conduit because we're all connected with our smartphones and our mobile devices these days. So I find it a fascinating industry, and we're constantly developing gadgets and tools and things to fight against the cyber criminals, and that's kind of what brings me here.
And it not only, it's not only a way to connect everyone, but just yesterday on the program we had an analysis from a research firm, and it was more of the market and business side of it, but he was very excited, and he kind of led me to believe that a lot of the other cell phone carriers and wireless carriers are excited about 5G. So if you thought there were a lot of communications happening wirelessly, wait until 5G takes off. It's all of the data that you don't want shared is going to be beaming just everywhere, and anyone can get between it. It's a matter of, security personnel such as yourself to make sure that they can't actually read what they collect. So
yeah, and you make a fabulous point when we think about going from the 4G, fourth generation technology of wireless to 5G. A lot of people instantly just say, well, it's faster. And yeah, it's going to be anywhere from 10 to 100 times faster depending upon how it's being used. But I think more importantly is all the new technologies that are surrounding 5G. So when people start to embrace the 5G ecosystem, now that suddenly becomes part of your smart home, your autonomous car, and all these other things that are kind of trickling in the background are going to really be able to come to life because of the 5G technologies with very little latency. Of course, this higher throughput and super data rates, it's going to change the way we communicate and the way we do just about everything in our lives. So it's kind of exciting, and at the same time, from the world of cybersecurity, as you mentioned, it's scary as heck because the bad guys are following right along with the latest technology trends, be it machine learning and artificial intelligence, and it's all converging with 5G. They're going to be new types of cyber hacks that we could never even dream of in the not-too-distant future.
Yeah, no, completely. And I will say that, when it comes to 5G, one thing that I think people are going to have to become very aware of is the fact that it's already been happening where, let's say Netgear Arlo, just for instance, I'm pretty sure the Arlo system just came out with one, but there are a lot of security cameras that instead of connecting to a home's Wi-Fi, which can be spotty, which can be, which can go down, things like that, they are already selling 4G connected home security cameras that don't have to be tethered to anything. They just need a power source and they can beam the information anywhere. If you live in an area that gets good 5G connection at some point, all of your security cameras are probably going to want to run on 5G because you could connect to them anywhere. Internet connection really doesn't matter because it's always going to be there. And hey, but at that point, you got to realize that your home security system is now, routing through a bunch of different nodes. So 5G is going to open up, I think, almost live video of your residence and either your data, your sensors, your fridge, your whatever. 5G is just going to be like the perfect way to track someone in real time. It's coming.
Yeah, and I think we're also always thinking about, at least currently through 4G, even some 3G, it's always tied or coupled to our smartphone. Now what we're starting to see is this whole evolution of smart speakers and things that you can just walk into a house and talk and ask to do a search on something or find a restaurant or this or that. But now where you bring 5G into the picture, as you were mentioning, you could actually imagine saying, hey, what's the wait look like at my favorite restaurant? And bam, it pops up on the closest screen to you, and you could see what the line is because they've got a camera right there. And the things that you could do are going to be pretty powerful and pretty spooky at the same time when you think about the standpoint of spying or eavesdropping or espionage. if it's used the wrong way. So it's going to be exciting times in the not too distant future.
Exciting in the way that there's a dating profile question on online dating, and one of them is like, in a certain light, is nuclear war exciting? And I think in the strict definition term of exciting, yes, it will invoke a lot of emotion, but we say exciting and it doesn't necessarily have a positive connotation. Hey, this could just be a very emotional, kind of ride that we're on. But hey, we're going to keep up to date on it. And speaking of emotional, my best way to segue into this is that I bet you Equifax is a little emotional. Honestly, I'm surprised and not surprised at the same time. This one just coming out yesterday from Forbes. You kind of gave us a link here. You can see it there on the video portion. But I'm not really surprised, and I'm happy that we're still talking about Equifax. It's been like 2 or 3 years, hasn't it, since the 2017? Yeah. So yeah, about 3 years.
2017 was the big breach. So 2.5 years or so.
I'm happy that we're still talking about this because it was such a big event, and I think everyone needs to really know about this and know that or at least I'm happy to know that there are consequences. These things are happening. And this is one that I can't believe it took 2 years to happen, but what do you think about Equifax becomes first firm to see its outlook downgraded due to a cyber attack?
Yeah, what really caught my eye instantly on this is I believe that this is literally the first time ever where there was a downgrade specifically correlated to a cyber attack. So it kind of draws a line in the sand, in my opinion, that tells firms that if they're not investing in proper proactive steps to protect data for their customers, or in this case, the consumer, they will be held accountable, and it's going to hit their bottom line. And here, clearly, you could see these charges that they're taking here. I think it mentions $690 million first quarter charge for the breach. It's because of all these lawsuits. People are fed up and they're done. You've got regulators going in, finding them. You've got people taking class action lawsuits. And this was the case, and we've talked about this, I believe, in the past, where we didn't really opt in or say, here, you can have my personal information. For many people, it was compromised without them doing anything or saying anything. And that is scary because they were the keeper of this information and they failed miserably, and now they're paying again and again and again. And I think this is not going to end anytime soon. These charges will be carried on quarter after quarter and force them to make some significant changes, which again will affect really the consumer reporting agencies out there will probably have to all follow suit.
It seems like one of the reasons that, and unfortunately, I would say that this article has more to do with the fact they have to invest more money, which, they should have been doing from the get-go. I'm sure that cities like Atlanta and Baltimore, I'm sure that, may come up later in our conversation, that, these cities are being hit. I bet you they wish that, that they had invested in the infrastructure to repel or at least recover from a, something as big as this. The fact that they kind of have to go back and say, well, it turns out that we built a train, but we never put any brakes on it, or we didn't put any guardrails on the train car, and now we're being downgraded because, hey, we have to install those. I'm happy that they got downgraded to some extent, but it looks like it's kind of short term. They're going to bounce back from this, and I think that's something that a lot of people really shouldn't, or they might not be happy with, is that, you've shared it here with us on the show before. If a small business gets hacked, depending on what they lose and how much of it they lose, or if they lose access to their system, payment, whatever, a small business can go under through one cyber attack. Like one cyber attack can completely sink a small business. I think it's the fact that this was a multi-billion-dollar business, and like you said, they were the arbiter of all of our information, and they kind of just shrugged off one of the biggest hacks like it was nothing. So I guess I'm happy to see some consequence, because to any other company that's not the size of Equifax, this would be like game over.
Yes, definitely.
So there you go. And so with that being said, they mentioned that they have more incentive to protect data. Scott, congratulations. I just made you president of Equifax. You are now in charge of running the company. What do you really focus on? Because obviously Equifax has been trying to do a PR campaign to say that, hey, we're trustworthy. Don't worry about us. But from a cybersecurity standpoint, do you just, do you, I guess, hire everyone with any kind of license to work in cybersecurity? I mean, how do you protect systems like this? Or do you renovate your system? Do you hire people? What are ways that a business that large can start to plug in the holes?
Well, I think probably yes to all the things you mentioned to some degree, but probably I would look back at where they made some of their faux pas and focus more on the business and the business model that they have in play. If you recall, after the breach in 2017, one thing they tried to do, and I think to their fault, which really hurt the brand, in my opinion, is offer people monitoring services. They did basic stuff, and then to upgrade you to a little bit higher premium to keep your information safe in case it's compromised. When you went on to actually find out about it, you had to enter in the last 4 digits of your Social Security number and provide them some further personal information. And I too was a victim of this, and I went through it and looked at it, and immediately it said to me, geez, here they are, they botched it, information was compromised, and now they're trying to monetize on me as a consumer and provide more information that I can't trust them with. So I think they have to back up from this. If I was there in charge at any level or chief information security officer, I would say, let's focus on the core. What's the valuable asset within our company? It's really the personal information that we've been entrusted with. Let's do the best job in the world to protect that information. I contrast that with J.P. Morgan when it was compromised a number of years ago through third-party access into their systems. What did they do? They made a commitment to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in focused cybersecurity protections throughout their organization so they could stay the safest bank that you want to bank with. So they took action, and they drew that line in the sand and said, here's what we did wrong. We failed you. We're sorry. Here's what we're going to do going forward, and they executed. So I think Equifax needs to have that clear game plan spelled out so people know. Otherwise, it's going to happen again and again and again. And I still don't see that they've done that fully. They're still trying to figure out how to settle all the lawsuits, calm people down, win back confidence. But it's really done by taking decisive action. I think they've tried. I'm not saying they failed miserably across the board, but in a lot of areas, they certainly blew it. And I think that adds insult to injury. And whoever is the first in a particular market segment, you look back at Target, everybody's always going to think of retail breaches. The number one is they're going to think of as Target. Even though Target didn't pay out the most, it didn't hurt their brand the most, they're kind of the poster child for the breach there. Same thing with Equifax, I think. They're always going to have that stigma associated to them as they continue to go through this mess of downgrades and taking hits quarter after quarter.
Yeah, and part of me is like, just having the name Equifax. There's going to be, and you know this, that hackers have a certain, the ones who partake in kind of the culture of hacking more so than the business side of hacking. Hackers are they're very vengeful. You wrote in Hacked Again how, once you claim that you were a cybersecurity expert, suddenly, hey, you put a target on your back. People want to hack the people who say they're unhackable or the best or whatever. There's a cultural side to this, and I feel like just having the name Equifax, it kind of, again, puts a target on your back and says, hey, hack me again, because if you can keep hacking Equifax, you're going to get a lot of attention for the amount of effort that you put in.
Yeah, true. Very true.
So with that being said, and by the way, you've done some work with cryptocurrency, and to just kind of make a quick segue here. When it comes to cryptocurrency, there's we've talked about the technology behind it, the blockchain, what have you. I wish people in government knew more about this kind of technology, because if there was some kind of open ledger, and think of all the benefits it could have for paying your taxes or for voting or just. I feel like the social security number, the 9-digit number that runs everyone's life, that's so outdated that thanks to Equifax and other such breaches, that number's out there and it's no longer really a good use of identifying oneself. I wish that blockchain to some extent would come into play with replacing social security numbers.
Yeah, and I think what you just defined there, in my opinion, is an excellent example of where blockchain can be used effectively to maintain a large database, to be used in a sense almost like to authenticate a person, whereas social security numbers really were never designed to be a unique identifier for each person. They kind of by default fell into that, and people were told when you were a little kid you probably got that bluish card, and guard this card with your life and don't give the number out to anyone, and blah blah blah. I always share my story is when I've gone to the doctors, and the first thing they do is, what's your social security number? And it's like everybody asks for it.
Yeah.
Form after form. And the worst part about it, it's not as bad just that they ask for it, is people freely give it out. And they think, well, it's my doctor's office. They're going to keep it safe. Or it's my XYZ. And I'm like, no. You're not required to give out that number to get medical care. You can provide them with other information, which you already are providing them with your phone number and your email and your address and your next of kin, and the list goes on and on. They want that number so they can, if you default on paying the bill, the insurance isn't going to cover it. They're going to use that to take you to collections. And when you have someone's social security number, there's a much larger chance or better chance that you can actually get that money back. And that's so you got to follow the money trail, and that usually tells you why somebody's asking for more than they deserve.
Right. The reason I bring that up is that I wish it was, because I don't hold that much hope that the United States government, because of the machinations of bureaucracy and what have you, I wish that it was Equifax that said that we have another system, we can develop something in, really, it's been almost 2-3 years, since this happened. I think in 2 or 3 years, with blockchain being the known entity that it is, Equifax or other credit rating systems or any other private company out there could have put forward an idea that could work in replace of all the information that they just lost, and it would be a much better system. But it seems like no one's really pushing for it. Everyone just wants to kind of keep the status quo when that's kind of falling apart around us, I guess.
It's true. And I think you made another nice point. Even for election, a lot of people question election integrity, the technology, the software. A lot of legacy systems out of there. It varies from state to state and area to area. And I think Microsoft is heavily invested in that infrastructure of election security there and trying to make their mark and do something to change. But I haven't heard of a lot of other companies that are new to the table trying to fix a very broken system that's very vulnerable and has been likely compromised at multiple points so far and probably will be again with this next election cycle. So their blockchain makes sense if it's deployed properly, and it could make a big difference, I think, in keeping not just an election secure, but probably doing it properly there with enough transparency that people will believe in the bigger thing.
Yeah, the reason I mentioned election with that was because I saw someone come up with kind of like a white paper, and they mentioned that imagine an election where you could see everyone's vote, but their vote would be kind of like a public key for a Bitcoin wallet or a cryptocurrency wallet. And if you ever wanted to verify, is that a real person or is that a fake, you would just have to take your private key and plug it into the database, and out would pop your name, your votes, and you could see right there whether or not your vote was cast for who you want. And then again, if you are questioning any number of them, you could just go find their private key, and compare and contrast against that public list. I mean, public ledgers make a lot of sense. So anyways, that was just a little deviation, and there you go. So Equifax, first firm to see downgraded thanks to its outlook, and really this is probably not going to be the last. There will be other companies out there that will suffer such massive data breaches that they're going to have to take a hit to their bottom line to say, we have to rethink some things. And that story was really just the impact of cybersecurity or cyber attacks and cybersecurity. So there's that one. Speaking of good targets, obviously businesses, money, that all makes sense. Your vehicle. This is something that I think people are starting to get more and more worried about. We've seen, let's just take Tesla. That's usually one of the most high-tech cars out there on the road. They are putting cameras. They're putting in internet connections. They have 4G, 5G connections themselves. Cars are now the Internet of Things. What is this article you wrote, or actually this article that you found, talking about hacking your car? Because you always think about, well, it could be possible, but why would they? What happens? What is this article about?
Well, it just kind of touches the surface. It's a little bit of a higher level, but I think it brings the conversation up, and maybe it's freshly on my head because the other day my brother, who lives in New York City, he has a Prius, was hit by a bus, so on and so forth. So he's in the market for a new Prius. So I went shopping with him at the dealer, and the car was loaded. This is a Toyota Prius, loaded with more electronics than I ever could even imagine. We spent more time trying to understand the entertainment systems and how you could connect into it. And this is, if a car gets too close to you, and this hits the brakes here, and this does this, and it's four-wheel drive automatic now, and so on and so forth. And you start to say to yourself, wow, a simple car that was always kind of cutting edge because it's a hybrid now has all these additional layers of things on there that are interconnected. And for me, I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, this is a hacker's paradise. You can get into the diagnostic systems. There's a USB port there beside the normal OBD2 port. You got to make sure that's locked. You got this entertainment system or informatics system. You can have an app on your phone to connect. And there's so many points of entries where possibly the electronic control units, the ECUs of a car, could be compromised. And it used to be that there was a small number of these engine control units. Now, some cars, it's 50-plus electronic control units throughout the car. Those are the points where the hackers want to get in, and they do this all through the various means of wireless that these things are interconnected. So it just scares me, and I think articles like this kind of raise the awareness. They had a couple nice infographics that, as you scroll down, it does give you some ideas of what you can do and what you can check. But I think it's more bringing up that conversation. You go out and buy a new vehicle, you got to think about how safe is it, not just on the road and not just about other drivers, but how safe is it from being a target for hackers.
Yeah, and of course, the first kind of target, I guess, because a lot of what this is talking about, I feel like it's not about stealing your car, and it's really not about crashing your car while you're driving it, but it's about really getting into the same information that's in your smartphone. It's your contacts, it's maybe some kind of payment information, it's, anything that you would compromise in a smartphone. It seems like your car is just becoming another way to get at that exact same information.
Yeah, and I think not too long ago I was renting a vehicle, and I got in, and it has the usual Bluetooth thing. It's trying to sync with the phone. I immediately shut my Bluetooth off, but then I'm looking, and I realized somebody prior to me, I don't know who it was, another customer, I guess that rented the car, synced their phone up probably so they could play their music from their Apple phone or whatever, their iPhone. But in there was all their contacts. And I say, oh, geez, they didn't even realize it. You wonder how many people that rent cars quickly hit the button, they sync, and not realizing it, it shares all their contacts. So would you like to be a contact in someone else's phone that suddenly is out on a rental vehicle that everybody has access to your home address, your email, your mobile device, other notes and information in the contacts? That's scary as heck. But these things happen each and every day as cars become more connected and wireless becomes a standard accepted across all different paths by all different people. Those vulnerabilities will be there.
Yeah, and hey, funny they mentioned that. Same thing happened to me a couple of months ago, and I did not, and really, I didn't even have to do anything because the car had kind of a built-in phone system. All I had to do was just, even while I'm driving, I could flip through the contacts and hit call on any one of those. And yeah, it's to me, that almost seems like a loss of information, and that person would never know about it. Like he kind of hacked himself, him or herself. They kind of hacked themselves without even realizing it, and that is kind of funny when it happens. So, Scott, we're about a minute, actually about 30 seconds away. So when we come back, I'm going to let you choose. For everyone out there who's listening, we're about halfway through, but we are not halfway through the articles that we have. We have everything from Flipboard reveals data breach, which is unfortunate because one of our correspondents loves Flipboard. New Zealand police called in after a massive hack attempt on well-being budget, and of course many others, including the Department of Defense's new home for cybersecurity standards, and more. So there we go. There's the music. Scott, we're going to be right back. Yep, and everyone, when we come back, Scott's going to go ahead and pick one of these stories, and we're going to talk about it. This has been a lot of fun so far, and everyone, hey, a lot of great information, and of course, go check out scottschober.com and computeramerica.com. Everyone, we'll be right back. Stay tuned right after this.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour. And yeah, if you missed any parts of today's conversation with Scott, then you can go to anywhere where podcasts are heard, search Computer America, and we should come right up. After the program today, you can download it, save it in the car. While your car is being hacked, hey, have them download Computer America while they're at it. With that being said, we continue on. Scott Schober, our resident cybersecurity expert, Berkeley Varitronics Systems, and author of Hacked Again, another book coming out shortly. Looking forward to that and more. So, Scott, thank you for continuing on with us.
Yeah.
All right.
Look
So,
forward to next discussion.
Yeah, no, and of course, show's half done, but that does not mean that our topics are exhausted because we have a lot to talk about. And hey, I'll let you go ahead and decide which one of these, grabs your attention.
Well, I think the one you mentioned before was a Flipboard, which is kind of an interesting one. Again, that one kind of caught my eye when I saw the story breaking not too long ago. And I think for any of us that have used Flipboard, you kind of either use it and love it or probably don't. But it's an app that kind of pulls together different news items and things that you like to follow. So I call it kind of curated or focused information that you want to see. But they did have an announce that they were affected by a breach, and it happened, as usual, over a period of time from about mid-last year, 2018, up until last month, 2019, April. and the typical things were compromised as far as contact information, this and that. But fortunately, they did have their passwords were protected, and they call it bcrypt, which is going to add a level of security. So it's difficult to decrypt that and actually access it. Is it possible? Sure, it is, but it makes it a lot harder because they didn't just use what's typically termed hashing, but they also use what's called assault to make it more difficult, which kind of scrambles it, if you have to think of it that way, to make it hard for your typical hacker to get into. So you have a level of security there, but maybe more to the point that everything is vulnerable now, no matter what we do. And in this case, this typically ties in with other third-party apps and social media and news platforms. And when you start doing that with different access to things and opening up accounts, you run the risk that somebody can get more information than you ever realized they had access to. So we want to really be careful and make sure whatever apps we're actively using, we understand the security provisions that are in place and what we're also opting into and allowing third parties to have access to. Because when there is a compromise, you don't know how far it's going to go. We hear now that a minimal amount of information was compromised. What happens if we hear a month from now, well, guess what? All the accounts that were compromised over the past almost year, they found a way to hack into it beyond just the password. And they could crack them and now have access to more information. We don't know those things. So it's good to just be very cautious before we're so quick to download and start using various apps on our mobile devices.
Yeah, the third party, the APIs, those seem to be just such a like. I understand why they're there. It's so that, let's say, if you have a game and you want to tie in with Facebook connectivity, you use Facebook's API, so you could tie your game into, so people could share on their Facebook or whatever. But it's almost a backdoor that these companies have to install into their products. Just like Flipboard, they have to have an API that will tie in with third parties. And again, it's almost like you have to give permissions and connections and a way to funnel that data. And it just seems so hard to be able to do that, I guess, effectively without oversharing the data. But it looks like they did pretty good. I mean, other than the fact that the encrypted passwords were stolen, but let's see, they said the username, which should be publicly available, email addresses, which are not good, but not too important, and and of course name, whatever name you put in there, not too bad.
Yeah, and I think it's the combination of this data breach in itself is probably not going to cause any huge damage. It's the breadcrumbs you pick out of this, and then you associate it to maybe another data breach where that information gets merged together, and it starts to become more powerful when you're trying to perform identity theft, when you're trying to take out credit in someone's name. So it just leads the bad guys down a path to make it easier for them each time they get another piece of that breadcrumb leading them in there. That's the scarier part.
Yeah, what if they got my email and then they compared that to the list from Equifax and they said, oh, Ben with his social security number and he still uses this email address. Let's check the other information. And yeah, you're right. It's still not good. So, but you're right. I have they said that they made everyone reset their passwords. So luckily, they had that under control. Looks like they handled that pretty quickly. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump over to this next one. This is something that I know that Berkeley Varitronics is very connected in. Skimmers seem to be something that were a plague. They were everywhere a couple of years ago. I think awareness, kind of caught up, but at the same time, I think it was efforts between law enforcement and the public just knowing about them. I don't know if it led to any kind of decrease, but I have not heard about, skimmer was found, and if you went to this gas station between these days, you need to change your credit card number. It seems to be slowing down a bit, but I see your smiling face here, and you're giving a report. What about skimmers are you reporting on?
Yeah, and what I'm starting to share and hopefully trying to educate people is that in some ways, old school traditional skimmers where they're put into a gas pump or any point-of-sale terminal. It could be at the retail side, a convenience store, gas pump, and to some degree ATMs. Some of that's slowing down, but a lot of the cyber criminals are getting just a lot smarter. They're finding ways to disguise them better. They're finding ways where they're deep insert skimmers so you can't see them at all. In other words, they're not in the plastic bezels that we're all told to shake and jiggle to see if the skimmer's buried in there. Or they're in the gas pumps especially, they're being placed inside because it's a universal lock and key system. There are 6 keys. Or these millions of gas pumps, you buy a key on eBay, you open it up, you buy off the dark web a skimmer that's got Bluetooth inside of it. So you put it in once, plug it in, lock it, 15 seconds, you're gone. And now once a day you drive up within proximity of about 75 foot to a gas pump that has a Bluetooth skimmer placed. And guess what? The consumer never sees it. And that's the part that's concerning me. So reports of them are few and far between because people don't actively see it unless they can get inside the electronics or have a tool to hunt it down and find that it's actually transmitting out to a bad guy, which is not going to be happening that frequently. So it's a very challenging problem, and it's become a multi-billion-dollar industry for cyber criminals. So what they're doing is really migrating away from the traditional compromises at the retail sector or where they're trying to get into computer networks to steal credit cards, and they're focusing on the gas pumps because it's easy to get in. If you notice your gas pumps, the very few, if any, have chip and pin technology. I don't see any hardly that have Apple Pay or Google Pay. So instead, it's traditional mag stripe that they're stealing. It's easy, 20-year-old technology, not secure, and easy to buy a credit card burner these days and burn fresh cards from all these stolen credit cards and go shopping. And probably the most important for criminals, it's really hard to catch them. It takes a lot of work and a lot of money between the Secret Service, FBI, local law enforcement, the petroleum industry, all working together to actually catch the guys that are doing this. So it's making, I think, this to become a very lucrative cyber crime at this instance until by the end of 2020 there'll be a shift in liability if gas pumps are not upgraded with chip and pin security. So it's one of those cat and mouse games where they're going to try for the next year and a half to make a whole lot of money, cyber criminals, at stealing our credit cards at gas pumps. What can you do?
Yeah,
well, obviously cash. Cash is king at a gas station. So I always tell people, even though it's not convenient, choose security over convenience. That's, I think, an important thing that we got to remember. And go to a trusted station that maybe you've been to for years. Maybe you're closer to the attendant where there's a camera, there's lighting. Less likely statistically to have a skimmer that's put in there after hours or things like that where it's well lit and where there is security personnel or a station owner to help you there. But when in doubt, use cash.
When in doubt, use cash. What is it? I was at the grocery store the other day, and the debit card, credit card system went down in the entire store. Oh my God! There was a run on the one ATM there. Everyone lost their minds. It was down for about half an hour. There was chaos. There were people falling from buildings. No, it wasn't that bad. But no, just having cash on you is becoming so. In so many cases, like kind of rare to have cash on you, but you can't get hacked with cash on you. So I like that. I definitely like the idea, and I definitely like the video that you put together. Very quick. Everyone out there should go check that out. And I definitely like how you kind of showed the Bluetooth IDs, where if you're in a busy spot, hey, you'll get 15, 20 different Bluetooth signals even just around you. So it's harder to detect. So great.
Yeah, and I think that's true. That unfortunately, a lot in the media have said, turn on your mobile phone, turn your Bluetooth discoverable on, and if you see a lot of wacky numbers and letters, you probably shouldn't use that gas pump. And I personally said, okay, I'm going to pretend I'm a consumer and have no idea about Bluetooth or anything else. Every gas pump I go to here in central New Jersey, and I turn my phone on, and if I have my Bluetooth on, I'm going to see a lot of wacky numbers and codes and things that I really don't understand. And these are Bluetooth IDs, everything from a smartwatch to a speaker to something else that's trying to sync in with Bluetooth. So it doesn't really tell you that a skimmer is in the machine. If anything, it's just going to get you nervous and tell you use cache everywhere. So it's a little bit misreported on. I think just consumers need to be cautious. That's all.
It's just bad information, and well, maybe not even bad information, but maybe just outdated information, stuff that really just doesn't help you anymore. So
yeah, well said.
Yeah, so we're definitely noticing that about a lot of technology trends. And so with that being said, man, we're not going to have enough time for all this stuff. Let's, speaking of outdated information, let's talk about Baltimore government and how, hey, some of their systems were a bit outdated because they fell victim to, well, I think they said this was a variant on the one that hit Atlanta or something like that. The point is that they got, Baltimore City is currently dealing with their own ransomware that has people who are trying to buy homes or pay their bills online, pay their taxes. They've shut down a lot of the government's, kind of internal machinations, which is not good because, hey, you want those things running and you want them running well. What about Baltimore and this hack? This has been going on for about a week. As far as I've heard, there's really no end in sight for how long they're going to, this is going to happen, because I heard that like they had a backup. They had a backup in place, but they don't have a good plan to actually implement the backup, which seems like a glaring flaw, which is, hey, we have a solution, but we don't have any way to enact the solution. So what did you pick up about all of this?
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting one because they've had a cyber attack in the past, and it was tied more to their emergency dispatch. And I think it alluded to it in the article, if I recall right. And now here they are hit again a couple of years later, and you've got the gun to your head. It's hurting the city. It's hurting the citizens of the city. And now if you're a taxpayer or any other type of thing where you're making an online payment, it's crippling them. So money's not coming in. Consumers can't buy things or pay for things that they're supposed to. And they're refusing to pay the ransom currently. This is Baltimore city officials have said. So it puts it kind of in a stalemate. And what does it technically do, I think, is in some ways it drives up the ante. As people get more desperate and government officials do, more than likely they're going to start to say, hey, we got a cave. If you can't implement your backup plan, which should have been implemented by now, after 24 hours, if you can't get that going, something else is more of a problem. And now here you're going on to week number 2. This could cripple Baltimore, and it really is setting a precedent for what could happen to other cities. If hackers see this as successful, they're going to now up the ante and target other cities, and it's not cheap. I mean, they're demanding I think $100,000.
Yeah.
Worth of Bitcoin, of course, because again, cryptocurrency and staying anonymous, and it's a great way for cyber criminals to work. That to me, it just scares me how damaging not just this attack is and will be played out, but what's going to happen as hackers continue to hit other municipalities, other cities. It could be devastating.
Yeah, and by the way, so this was a variant of Robinhood 2 with bees, access servers without a specific digital key. So this was probably something that was, I guess, not secured well. And really, when you have a system as large as, let's say, a city government, and they mentioned that like 10,000 computers are currently quarantined. I mean, hey, that's 10,000 people potentially using those computers who can click on an email link, who can run a program they weren't supposed to, and any one of them could have been at fault here and led to this. So one thing I heard about the reporting on this, and I wanted your comment on this. The mayor said, we will not pay this ransom because there's no guarantee that we'll get the money, but that we'll get the, once we give them the money, that we'll get the information back. They could just say, hey, thanks for the 100,000. Where's that 300,000 you promised? And they could just keep going up and up and up. Hackers are, I should say criminals at this point. You don't like negotiating with criminals, but do you pay the ransom and kind of cross your fingers, or do you just say, well, our data's locked and we have to find some other way and completely ignore these hackers who are still in communication are still saying, hey, pay us the money, pay us the money, pay us the money. They're still on the other end of the phone, but I guess the city's choosing to just kind of ignore them. What's the call here?
I think it's a really hard call because typically with many of these ransomware attacks, when we look at it, say it's a small business or something like that, maybe the actual cost might be between $300 and $500 in Bitcoin because they know the point of pain that a small business owner is willing to pay instead of trying to maybe pull out a backup or an old backup or repair things or wipe the system and do some manual workarounds. It's very different in this case, I think, as you pointed out. You've got 10,000 plus computers that are basically locked. Mm-hmm. So now you've got employees with their hands tied. They can't do their daily functions. And I think the article talked about just paying basic bills, your sewer, your water, your property taxes. Now you've got income coming in from all these residents that's not coming in because everything's frozen up. So at some point, you got to get that workaround, be it manual or partial, get part of the network up. You got to get that up quick. You can't afford to have an outage go on for another week or two because that could start to cost millions of dollars. So at a certain point, the hackers realize that, and they're probably weighing it and saying, let's up the ante, as you mentioned. Let's bump it up. Hey, it's going to be $250,000. You waited too long. That could be what they're calculating right now. So they probably got to make a decision really quick. I typically encourage people, don't give in, don't embolden the hackers by paying the ransom. But at a certain point, they got to make a decision, I think. And I think it's taken a little too long. And that's what I think the bad guys are counting on because they're going to start to see how expensive this will actually cost Baltimore's government. And they're going to have to say, okay, we've got no choice. We're better off paying X number of dollars now, even though it's a lot higher than it was, than let this game go on and on and on. It's too painful.
It really is painful. And of course, between Atlanta, I think there was a city, maybe it was Boulder or Denver, Colorado, that this happened to, and now, of course, Baltimore. If I ran any kind of city that, and I was in charge of making sure that our networks were secure, I'd be calling someone out there and saying, hey, how do we protect ourselves against at least the basics? Because again, this wasn't completely unknown. Like, I don't want to say this is WannaCry. This is, again, Robin Hood, but this has been seen in the wild before. So if everything was just updated and everything was, the latest and greatest, they should have been immune to this. But for everyone out there who does run these systems, just update as much as you can, as fast as you can. Update your city as much as you can, and you'll be much more protected against this. Because this is not Tom Cruise. This is just people trying old keys to a certain, to everyone's door, and sometimes they get lucky.
Yeah, and I think to your point, hopefully those listeners out there that maybe you're working in a municipality, a sheriff's office, wherever, they could take seriously the importance of regular backups and disconnecting it from your network, perhaps storing it off-site. The cost for a drive now, I mean, I have a 4 terabyte drive I keep on my desk here. It's about the size of a mobile phone. Yeah. It's a couple $100. It's fast. There's no latency in it. You could do a full backup in no time, and you could remove it and lock it in a fireproof safe at your house or a safety deposit box. Again, security versus convenience. You're going to spend a little bit of time. Maybe it takes you an hour to do a backup once a month or so. But man, look at the pain they're going through here on week 2. Not able to even get their backup in place and their systems back up and running, and they still got this looming, threat demanding ransom for $100,000. It's hard to do business, hard to survive in a situation like that.
Right, absolutely. And then on top of that, just to put a cherry on top, they said that the local media reported that the hack could cost about $17 million to recover. So, hey,
yeah,
even
easily. easily.
Yeah. So even if that money doesn't go to the hackers themselves, that money is going to go to tons and tons of IT personnel who have to actually put everything back in place. So
Driving the taxes up even more.
Yeah. So this is a huge problem. So there you go. There's that one. We have time for one more topic, and then I wanted to let you go ahead and talk real quickly about cybersecurity is everyone's business. Is everybody's business. But one more topic that I wanted to cover, and that was, I had it right here, 5G. So for everyone out there who did not catch yesterday's, was it yesterday's show? Yes, it was yesterday's show. We talked again with an analyst for 5G cell phone companies. It was a great conversation. I definitely like talking about the numbers and things like that. But the point is, while we talked about 10 minutes on Huawei and all the woes there, I think we both came to the conclusion that what's happening with Huawei is that there is a significant political shove against them so that the U.S. government can kind of leverage Huawei to apply pressure to the Chinese government for trade negotiations, for intellectual property theft, for X amount of things. Essentially, Huawei is kind of a key player when it comes to 5G development, for cell phones, for a lot of things. You have this article here. I did not catch this because last I heard about this, Europe was implementing 5G using Huawei radio devices and radio towers, and the U.S. is like, "Hey, stop doing that. We're trying to cut Huawei out." And Europe's like, "We can't help it. We're addicted to the cheap stuff." And by cheap, maybe I should say affordable stuff. Because Huawei has some of the best prices when it comes to wireless antennas and things like that. In fact, even Canada, I think, is practically built on Huawei as well. So it's this company that we just can't seem to either, like, we really, really, really want to hate them, but at the same time, everyone that we deal with, from Australia to Europe to Canada and many other places, Huawei is just like the biggest thing out there. So what about this article really caught your attention?
Yeah, well, I think you make a great point about just Huawei. We hear about the name. Maybe it's not a household name because it doesn't roll off our tongue, but just last year alone, they raked in over $100 billion in revenue. To me, that alone, when you associate it to a Chinese company, could be scary. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is, and this article touched on this as well as many other articles this week, Huawei's ability to deeply discount its infrastructure equipment, in particular the smartphones and the 5G equipment, is staggering. And there's talk of in spots where they've discounted 60% less than Ericsson, for example, which is a well-known, top-quality Swedish firm. They build great stuff. They've been around for a while. If they can underbid a vendor such as Ericsson by 60%, they can own the world, if you think about it. Because there's only so many players out there that can build 5G infrastructure and build it out quickly and affordably, and not touching on the word of security here, of course. And that's really the crux of the matter, I think. And that's what I think especially President Trump and his administration has pushed. They're calling this, that Huawei, basically a national security threat, not just for the U.S., but really globally, if Canada, if Europe, and other countries accept this more attractive infrastructure equipment and 5G build-out through Huawei, there's going to be a huge security problem that'll affect the U.S. national security immediately, not to mention their own country's security. So this, I think, is going to really play out scary, because usually price wins in everything in the world of cell phones. Yeah. You can build a cheaper cell phone, you build cheaper base stations, cheaper service contracts, the masses will adopt it, and China will certainly control the world of wireless then.
So don't get me wrong, we've already written articles about China and how I'm going to keep saying this until it becomes the truth. If you want to see everything that's wrong with technology when it comes to spying on one's own population, on data tracking, on finding segments of the population that are vulnerable and keeping them oppressed, watch what China does with technology and data, because they are doing human rights abuses left and right. I have no doubt about it. But so I'm not really a fan of what China does. But I do want to say China owns manufacturing of technology that that we talk about every day, and of course every month here on the show with you. You make it in China or you don't make it at all. That's just kind of the way it is. My question is, if Huawei is such a big problem with their 5G antennas or anything else, how do we shift away from that? How do we get our cell phones, our TVs, our smartphones, our cars, our everything technology that we talked about here today comes out of China? If we don't trust Huawei, why do we trust every other thing that's built in China for the exact same reason? And I feel like that's a bigger question that we're going to have to answer as, I guess, American consumers at some point.
Yeah, and I think part of the answer is you don't shop on price. Price does not dictate security. You have to be willing to pay a little bit more for devices that are secure.
Right. Pay a little more. You're right. And with that being said, music playing in the background. Scott, real quick, I want you to touch on you have a release date for your book, or at least a release time frame for your book. What is that?
Yeah, end of summer. Cybersecurity is everybody's business. I'm really excited about this. I'm delving deeper into cybersecurity and sharing tips how people can stay safe. End of summer, it'll be out on Amazon and many Barnes & Noble bookstores.
Very, very cool. Looking forward to it. We hope to get our copy, and of course, we love to talk with you about it. And Scott, until next month, thank you so much for coming on the show. Great conversation as always, and happy that you could join us.
Thanks again, Ben. Stay safe.
Yep, stay safe. Have a great day. Have a good one. Everyone else out there, we're flat out of time. Catch us here tomorrow. Everyone, same time, same place. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.